Okay, so good morning. Today's daf is daf nun chet of Gittin, Maseches Gittin. We're in the fifth parak. We are still talking about the destruction of the Jewish people in connection with the Korban Bayesheni, the destruction of the second Beit HaMikdash. And all of this was based on this concept of sikrikon, which were certain bad people who would try and steal the land of the Jewish people, of somebody Jewish, by essentially threatening to kill them. And this was viewed as a viable threat, a threat that was actually real. And so in order to address that and address the unfairness associated with that, the rule was originally that if you bought the land, you first from the sikrikon and then from the Jew, so then you needed to return the land to the Jew because the Jew was just selling it to you in order to try and make it easier to collect from you. On the other hand, if the Jew if you bought it from the Jew first and then the sikrikon, well, then the Jew didn't need to sell it to you. There was no reason for him to sell it to you since it was in the hands of the sikrikon. So the fact that he sold it indicates his willingness to let go of it if you in fact buy it from the sikrikon. But then the rabbis decided, you know what, we're going to change the rule. We're going to say that actually if you buy it after a year, you get to keep it, but you have to give a quarter to the original owner. And we'll see exactly what the quarter is, that God willing tomorrow. That's going to be our cliffhanger at the end of the day, to sort of ruin the cliffhanger at the end of today. All right, but we are on the bottom line of Nun Zayin Mabet. Who's the famous person today? I think we have, who do we have? I think we will have a little bit of Rashi, but right now we're going to have some stories, some sad stories, and so there won't be that much Rashi on them. But all right, let's jump right in. Amar Rava bar bar Chana. Oh, one second, let me share my screen and get going. Okay, so Amar Rava bar bar Chana, Amar Rabbi Yochanan. So it said in the name of Rabbi Yochanan, in how great was the destruction of Beitar? Arba'im sa, 40 sa, Kitsutze tefillin nimtzu barashe haruge Beitar. That the people in Beitar were still, many of them were still wearing tefillin, and so they found 40 sa of tefillin on the people's heads. Rabbi Yanai Rabbi Yishmael Amar shlosh kupot shel arba'im sa. They actually found 3 times 40 sa, or 120 sa. B'masnisan Tana, and then there was a Tana that taught in a Brisa, Arbaim Kupos Shel Shalosh Sein. That actually was 40 of threes, not 3 40s, but 43s. This obviously that gets the same number. Now, we're going to say below pliki, and even though one group was saying 120 saw in total, and another group was saying 40 saw in total, because Hadaresha Hadadara, that this one was talking about the tefillin that go on the head, and one was talking about the tefillin that go on the arm. Now, what's the difference between the tefillin that go on the head and the arm? Well, in the tefillin that go on the head, so there are 4 separate compartments, one for each of the tefillin, each of the parshiot. But in the tefillin that go on the arm, there's one compartment, and it has all 4 parshiot in it. And Rashi explains. So here we have a good Rashi. So let's take a look. Second line on Nun Chet Amud Aleph, the dara of the arm. So memsa. So that would be 40 saw on the arm. The duresha shehem gedolim arba batim b'chol ketzitza. So havu gimel. So that was when Gimel Zimne Mem saw. So when it came to the arm, that was the 40 saw. But when it came to the head tefillin, because it had the 4 compartments, it needed to be larger. So that's why it was 120 saw. Now Ve'im Tomar Arba Lohi, that it's not actually, even though it's got 4 compartments, you doesn't lo hi shebeit echad shel zroa gadol me'echad mibate harosh, that if you don't actually have that that one compartment of the arm is less than is a quarter the size of the ones on the head. Because in the hand, on the arm tefillin, it's one box, one compartment, but all four parshios are included. But in the head one, it's one compartment, one parshia in each compartment. So, but it's still, even so, we're going to say that the tefillin shel rosh is going to need to be a little bigger. So in the end, Rashi says, well, that's why it's 3 times and not 4 times, because so the question is sort of like, if in fact it's 4 different houses, 4 different compartments, why in fact is it only 3 times larger? And the answer is because you still need more space in the arm tefillin because of the need for because you need to put all 4 parshios in it. So as a result, in the end, the ratio is only 3 to 1, not 4 to 1. All right, so that's
considered primary again.
Sorry?
Which one is considered primary, the head or the arm?
Well, they're both necessary. If you can't do one, you should do the other. But I believe that the rosh is more primary than the head, but I'm not 100% sure.
And that's why the compartments are separated.
Oh, I'm sorry. I apologize. More than the arm. Rosh is more than the arm, but the head is the one with the compartments is the one for the head.
Right. That's the primary one.
Well, I don't know that one can say that either one is primary. Again, you have to have both, and indeed we make a bracha. We put on the shel yad first before the shel rosh. So there is an aspect of primariness to the shel yad. So, but I don't know the answer that if you could only have one tefillin, which one do you get? I'm not 100% sure that the answer would be shel rosh, but the arm goes on first. The arm goes on first. That's correct. I mean, if you only have one, I think that since they're differently structured, you'd put it on the one that you have. So that's what I would think, but I'm not. Again, I haven't researched the question, and so if that's ask your local Orthodox rabbi upon the particular situation, or maybe I'll see if I can do a little bit of research and answer that question. If somebody wants to check Rabbi Google, that would be great. So all right, so Amar Rabbi Asi. So now having talked about again the destruction, we're going to now talk about the additional stories, how much destruction there was. So again, another aspect of how much destruction there was, we saw sort of how much blood flowed. Amar Rabbi Asi, arba kaven moach nimtzu al even achad. That there were 4 kav of brains that was found on one particular stone. And Ula Amar Tishas kaven, it was 9. Amar of Kahana, Itema Shila Barmari, my how do I, what's the, Torah-based description, Tanakh-based allusion to this? Bas Babel Hashaduda Ashrei Yishalim Lach, that, that violated daughter of Bavel, praiseworthy is who is the one who will repay you. Ashrei, and the pasuk continues, or the psukim continue, Ashrei sheyoches v'nipetz es olalayach el hasela. Praiseworthy is who is the one who's going to clutch and dash your infants against the rock. So again, the point is that that just as the enemies of Bavel will eventually dash Babylonian children against rocks. And that's in retribution for what was done to the Jewish children. So the echoes to the Holocaust are very present here. B'nai Tzion hayikarim hamisulim ba'paz. That it says in Eicha that which we'll read a week from Thursday, 2 weeks from today, that the precious children of Zion.
A week from Wednesday.
Oh yeah, oh no, you're right. We're going to read it on Wednesday night. So my apologies. That you're absolutely right. We're going to read it Wednesday night. So a week from 2 weeks from last night. So that's when it's so the pasuk says the precious children of Zion who are misulaim with paz. Paz is usually either gold or some kind of jewel. So what does it mean, misulaim b'paz? So if you were to say that they are that they are covered in paz, well, the ha'amri debate Rabbi Shila, if that's supposed to be something special about the children of Israel, that they are adorned with beautiful jewels. But we have a statement of Rabbi Shila that mitarte matlekale istere Pisa Nachos Ba'alma, that there were 2 Istera weights of paz that came into the world, that Rome essentially got half of all of the world's paz, whether that's gold or whatever kind of adornment. And so so that can't be what's reflected in this statement, because the Jewish people don't have that much paz. So Ella Shahayu Maganin es hapaz biyofyan, that they actually made paz. If you think paz is beautiful, then you should really look at the beauty of the children of Zion. So the point is that this pasuk is highlighting how beautiful our children are. And so now we're going to have an emphasis of exactly why that is, or what the result was, unfortunately, in connection with Rome. So mikara chashive de Rome havu nakte bilyona de gushpaka umishamshe arsayahu, that when they would engage in conjugal relations, so the leaders of Rome would put the beautiful figures that were engraved on their rings, so that would be what they would focus on. This is based on in some ways the understanding of the Torah story in connection with Yaakov, where he put up the speckled and the different kinds of rods, and the sheep looked at them, and as a result had the speckled or the striped or whatever kind of goats and sheep that they needed to have in order for them to belong to Yaakov. And so for historical purposes, for many, many millennia, people believed that what you were looking at the time you had marital relations determined the offspring and what the offspring would look like. And it was not really until the 17th and 18th centuries that, in fact, there's one of my favorite commentaries on the Torah is Shadal, and Shadal actually cites a paper. I believe the paper was written in the 18th century of doctors who sort of were testing the theory and saying, no, it's not actually based on that. And this doctor felt that in his scientific paper he needed to actually address the issue of Yaakov's story in the Torah, saying, here's a different way to read that story, that it isn't actually about what you look at, because in fact it seems like it's not about what you look at. And of course, the reason that all of this came up is because people were having, the wives were having relations not with their husband, and so they would excuse the children that didn't look like the husband, because they would say, oh, well, I happen to have seen that person at the moment, and so as a result, that's why the child happens to look like John, even though I'm married to you. Whatever. Yeah, exactly. So, all right. So in any event, so that's what they would do. But once they conquered Israel, Mikan ve'elach, Maisu b'nei Yisrael v'asrei b'charei b'furayu v'u'mishamshe. So they would actually just tie the Jewish children up next to their beds, and then they would engage in the in marital relations. So Amr lei chad lechabre. So you have these Jewish children that happen to be subjected to this, and one says to the other, "Ha heicha ksiva." Where in the world is it written in the Torah, in Tanakh, that this could happen to us? So Amrlei, Gam, so this is a pasuk in Dvarim, a part of the Tochacha, where it says, Gam kol choli v'chol maka asher lo kasav b'sefer HaTorah azos, that not only will Hashem do all the things that are written, but even other things that are not written in the Torah will be brought upon you. So Amar, so obviously this is indicating how young this person is. Kama marchikna meduchta plan. Apparently the older one who was answering the question was either facilitating the teaching or part of the teaching with him, but and was conveying to him his Torah knowledge. And so the first one asks, how far was I from reaching that particular verse? So Amar lei, Ingad pusta ufalga. It's just a little bit. It's a column and a half. So Amar lei imatai legabe lo itzrachilach. If I had reached that verse, if I had known about that pasuk that said that all these other possible punishments could happen, I wouldn't have needed to ask you the question. So, all right, Amar Rav Yehuda, Amar Shmuel, Mishum Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel. So, my dixiv, Eini Olala Linafshi Mikol Benos Iri. So, trying to understand this verse in Eicha, again, we'll read a week from this coming Wednesday night. So, my eye has brought me grief over all the daughters of my city. So, Arba Meos Bate Kinesios Hayu Bekrach Beitar. So, there were 400 shuls in Beitar. And each of them, they had 400 teachers. So basically, every shul also served as a school during the week. So every teacher had 400 students. So 400 times 400 is 160,000, if I got that right. And so we had 160,000 students learning every day in Beitar, and Kishahaya Oyev, right? 400 times 400 is
400 schools, 400 teachers, and 400 students.
Oh, 400 cubed. You're right. I left out a 4. So add another 4. So that's 6. No, 64 million. Yeah, 64 million. Yes, thank you, Chicago. 64 million. Yeah, a lot of people, a lot of students. Thank you. I forgot about the 400 shuls. So 64 million. Okay. So what? How they fit it in? Well, we answered that yesterday. We said that the land of Israel is like the skin of a deer. That once you remove it, you remove the insides, so then it shrinks. So the point is that the more Jews you put in Israel, the bigger Israel gets. It's like a miracle. And also they were tinokas, so there was one. Yes, exactly. They were children still. All right. So Tana Rabbanan Ma'aseh Rabbi Yoshua ben Chananya shehalach l'krach gadol shebaromi. So Rabbi Yoshua ben Chananya went to one of the great cities in Rome. Amrulo, they said to him, there's one a kid in the jail. He's very attractive. And his, he has curls. Basically he has like either payas or curls that are are particularly attractive in his hair. So halach va'aman al pesach beis asurim. So assuming that this person must be Jewish because he's so beautiful, so Rabbi Yoshua ben Chananya goes into the prison and he says, Amar mina san l'mshi so Yaakov l'Yisrael levozim. So citing the first half of a pasuk in Yeshayahu, So he says, who's given Yaakov over for spoil and Israel for plunder? So Ana Ototino Amar. So that child says, Halo Hashem zu chatanu lo v'lo avu v'drachav haloch v'lo shamu b'soraso. It's Hashem that this was that this but this that we brought our that we had this fate is because we sinned against God, and our fathers did not want to go in his way, and they did not listen to his Torah. So Amar, given the fact that this young boy is not only attractive but also very wise, so Yehoshua ben Chananya said, "Muvtchani bo shemora hora b'Yisrael." This is somebody who's going to be able to teach Torah to the Jewish people. Havodah she'eni zan mikan. So as a result, Havodah is a form of oath. I'm not going to leave here. Whatever they ask for, I'm going to pay the ransom. Amru lo zaz nisham ad shepado b'mamon harbe. So he didn't do that. He didn't move until he eventually redeemed the boy for a large amount. V'lo hayu yamim muatin ad shehora hora b'Yisrael. And in fact, he taught great Torah to Israel. Umanu, who was this? Rabbi Yishmael ben Elisha. This was Rabbi Yishmael ben Elisha. And Amar Rabbi Yehuda Amar Rav. Unfortunately, Masa b'no b'tosha Rabbi Yishmael ben Elisha. This Rabbi Yishmael ben Elisha was eventually was a Kohen and is referred to as a Kohen Gadol. He was his son and daughter were captured by two different Leshnei Adonim, to two different masters. Liyamim nizdavgu l'shneihem b'makom echad. It turned out that the two masters were in a particular place. Zeomar yesh li evet she'ein b'kiyofyo b'chol ha'olam, v'zeomar yesh li shivcha she'ein b'chol ha'olam kula b'yofyo. So the first one said, I've got a young man who's the most beautiful, and the other said, I've got the daughter who's most beautiful. And this, of course, if this sounds familiar, it's because we have one of the keynote on Tisha B'Av that we'll read on Thursday morning. So 2 weeks from today is the kina of Ves Navi Chatasi Hishmima, that my sin caused the destruction of my temple, and it talks about this particular situation. So Amru, they said, let's get them married, and we'll split up the kids. So they brought them to a room. So each one sat in their own corner. I'm a Kohen, the son of Kohen, the descendant of Kohanim Gedolim. How am I going to marry a slave woman? And this is the woman, the daughter said the exact same thing. How can she marry a slave? They cried all night. When dawn broke, they recognized each other. They fell on each other, weeping, and until their souls, until they died. And Conan Yirmiyahu, and about them, Yirmiyahu, this is in Kohelet, the reference to the following: Al Eila ani buchia, eini eini yor demayim, is a reference to these young children who who were treated this in terrible way. So all right, so Amar Reish Lakish, Masa be'isha achas v'tzafnas bas Peniel Shema. There was another situation, given having talked about one mistreatment of children, we're going to talk about another one. So a woman named Safnas, the daughter of Peniel. Safnas shahakol tzofin biyofya. Her name was Safnas because everybody saw how beautiful she was. Bas Peniel bitosha kohen gadol sheshimish lifnei ulifnim. And she was referred to as Bas Peniel because she was a descendant of the Kohen Gadol who served in the innermost chamber, in the Kodesh HaKodeshim, which is, Peni, the what?
Face of God.
The face of God, but also Lifnei v'Lifnim is the innermost, and that also is a play on Penim, Penei. Shenis alel ba sheboy kol alayla. So her captor mistreated her all night. L'machar hilbisha shiva chalukim v'otzia l'machra. So, and after having abused her all night, then he was taking her out to sell her. Ba'adam echad shahaya mechoar v'yoser amar lo her'eni es yofia. So this particularly ugly guy said, "Listen, you've got her covered with 7 layers of clothing. I want to see how beautiful she is." Amrulo, Reka, listen, you're a monster, an empty person. If you want to buy her, great. You're not going to see anyone as beautiful as this. So Amrulo, well, yeah, fine, that's still, but I want to see. If Shito Shisha Chalukim, he removed 6 clothes from her. Ushvi'i karate v'nis palsha be'efer. So she wasn't going to allow them to continue the abuse. So she ripped off the 7th and she rolled around in the dust and said to Hashem, Amra lefanav, Ribono Shalom, Imalenu lo chasta. If you're not having pity on us, Akadusha Shimcha Hagibor Lama lo sakus. At least you should have pity on your own great name. V'haleha Konen Yirmiyahu. And so on this, Yirmiyah was lamented. Basami chigri sak v'his halshi va'efar. That the daughter of my people, wears a sackcloth and rolls in ashes, which also can, often afer and upper dust can be connected to one another. Evel yachid asilach, make for yourself a mourning. I'm sorry, mispad tamrurim kipis om yavo hashoded alenu. That make for yourself a mourning as for an only son, a most bitter lamentation, for the plunderer shall suddenly come upon us. So alayach lo namar, it doesn't say come on you, meaning the people, ella alenu, but rather us, which refers to Hashem as well. Kiviyachol alayva alayach ba'shoded. So this plunderer is coming on all of us, on not only Israel but on God, and that's consistent with the idea that Hashem is with us. That bitzara, that Hashem is anochi mecha bitzara, that Hashem is with us even in our most difficult times. So Amar Rav Yehuda, Amar Rav, my diksiv ashku gever uveso v'ish nachla v'nachlaso. So this again is this is a pasuk actually in Micha. So, and they said they oppress a man and his house, even a man and his inheritance. So Maaseh b'adam echad shenasan esav be'eshes rabo v'shulya denagre haba. Okay, so there was a certain circumstance where there was a guy who was looking at the wife of his teacher, and he was Vishulya is an apprentice, denagre of a carpenter. It was this person. So we have this carpenter's apprentice who's looking at the wife of the master carpenter. So one time the master carpenter needed to borrow some money, so he went to the apprentice. So Amrlo, and the apprentice said to him, Sugar ishtacha etzli alvenu. Go, send your wife to me and I'll give her the money. Shiger ishto etzlo shah ima shlosha yamim. So he sent his wife, and the apprentice spent 3 days with her. So kadam uva etzlo. So the master came and was looking for his wife. Amrlo, and so the master said, Ishti shashigarti lacha heichani. Where's my wife that I sent to you? So Amrlo, ani petartia la'altar. I sent her away immediately. Vishamati shahatino coach nis'aluba b'derech. But I hear that some youths and she got were doing some inappropriate things. So of course the master, believing the student, says to the master, Ma says, so what should I do? So Amrlo, imata shomei la'atzasi garasha. If you're going to listen to my advice, you should divorce her. So Amrlo, Ksubasa Meruba, but I can't divorce her. She's owed, if I were to divorce her, she's owed a lot of money. So Amrlo, so the student said back, Ani alvacha, v'tein la Ksubasa. I'm going to lend you, and then you can pay me back. I'll lend you what you need in order to pay the ksuba. So Amad Zevigarsha, so the master carpenter went out and he divorced his wife. And halachu unsa. So the student then went and married her. Kivan she'egias mano below hayalo lifaro. When of course the master carpenter didn't have the money to pay. So amrlo. So the apprentice said to him, Bova asaimi b'chovcha. Listen, come work for me, and you'll have to pay off your debt. V'hayu heim yoshin v'ochlim v'shosim. So the couple were sitting and eating and drinking. V'hu haya omed u'mashka leihen. And he would stand there and serve them. And of course, he still loved his wife. V'hayu d'ma'os no shros me'ena v'nofos b'choseihen. And his tears would fall into from his eyes and drop into their cups. V'al osan shah nischatem gzardin. And this was the final action that sealed the fate of the Jewish people. But some say it wasn't this that sealed the destruction of the Jewish people, but rather the fact that they had that the wife and the student had engaged in adultery during those 3 days. But the bottom line is this kind of treatment of another person is so inappropriate, and it highlights that it's unfortunate that it seems like in today's world we have people who treat each other this way too, and so we have to do our best to try and make sure that we are always kind and appropriate to one another. All right, so now, yes, 2 wicks and 1 candle is a euphemism for adultery. Well, it's for yes. Meaning the point is that it literally means, right? The allusion is clearly to 2 people having a relationship with one woman. So I don't think it's intended that if in fact the first, right. So that's the lamp. The woman's the lamp. Where you put the wicks in. So, all right. Anyway, all right. So now we finally get back to the topic of our Mishnah. So, lakach minas sikrikon. So we're at the 2 dots at the bottom of Nunchetam and Aleph. So you acquire from a sikrikon. So Amar Rav Lo Shanu Elo de Amar Lo. So okay, sorry. Let me just scroll the screen. So so again, as a reminder, if our Jew said that if a buyer first purchases it from the sikrikon and then the owner, so then the purchase is void. But if the buyer purchases it first from the owner and then the sikrikon, then it's a valid purchase. And the Gemara is now going to qualify where it's not a valid purchase. So Amar Rav Lo Shanu Elada Amar Lo. So when you bought it from the seller, from the original owner, it's only not going to be a good transaction unless if the person says Le Chazekukni, go take a chazaka and you can buy it, because that's not a definitive act. Meaning that's an act of resolution not being whatever happens. Meaning there's nothing I can do about this. The big guy stole it from me and he was going to kill me, and so as a result, you just take it from me. I can't deal with it. Aval bishtar, if the original owner sells it to the buyer with a contract, with a written contract, then it's going to be enforceable, even though it was bought first from the sikrikon and only then from the original owner. Shmuel Amar af bishtar nami lo kana. It's not enough to have just a contract. Ad sheyichtav lo achrayas. You actually have to. The seller actually has to say, listen, not only am I selling it to you, but if somebody comes and claims it from you because I owed them money from a previous loan that I borrowed, you will have a claim against me for the fact that they were able to take the land away from you. And Tanya Kuvase to Shmuel, and we actually have a brisa that says almost exactly what Shmuel says, except it's in a slightly different context. It's in the context of somebody buying land from a husband and a wife, where the wife has a claim on the land as a due to having a lien on it in connection with her ketubah, and so as a result, the person says, the same situation is set up if the person buys it from the wife first. So Rabbi Shimon ben Elazar Omer lakach min isha v'chazer v'lakach min ha'ish makcho kayam. if you first buy it from the wife and then from the husband, it's a valid transaction because the wife didn't have any need to sell it. She wasn't trying to just satisfy the needs of her husband. She wasn't just resolved that there's nothing she could do about it. So as a result, the fact that she sold it, it's a valid sale and she won't have any longer a claim on that land. But minha ish v'chazer v'lakach minha isha. If it was first bought from the husband and then bought from the wife, makro batal ad shetichtov lo achrayas. It's that transaction is void until the wife writes a level of responsibility that she's going to be liable if in fact the land gets taken from the person. So again, Nema Tehevi Tiyuf to the Rav does this. That not only is this a proof for Shmuel, support for Shmuel, but it seems like it completely contradicts Rav. So Amrlach Rav, my achrayus nami shtar. So what does it mean here by achrayus? It means achrayus in that it would be that it's done through a contract. And why? Because Rashi explains that responsibility here means a contract, because when you write a contract, then no one's able to back out of the deal. And so that's the responsibility that is being referred to. It's not the traditional responsibility of being responsible should somebody else take away the land as a result to a debt. Okay, so Tana Rabbanan. So now we have, our Mishnah noted that the rabbis eventually ruled that if a sikrikon has held the property for 12 months, so then whoever buys it from the sikrikon can keep it themselves, but the buyer must give 1/4 to the original owner. So which is analyzed by the Gemara by first quoting a brisa. So Tana Rabbanan, we learned in a brisa, if you buy it from the sikrikon, and now you eat the produce of that field for 3 years in front of the original owner, and now you sell it to the original buyer sells it to a second buyer. So the original owner has no claim against the second purchaser to say, hey, I never got the 1/4 payment that I'm supposed to get from the first purchaser. So hey Chidami, what's the story here? So if the person claims that the second purchaser claims that, hey, the first purchaser bought it from you, he paid you 1/4 already. Well, then afilu rishon nami, even the first purchaser himself should be believed to make that claim. If given the fact that 3 years have passed, so as a result, there's a sense of chazaka on the land. And idaloka time, and if the second purchaser is not making the claim, v'amar minach savna, and saying that the first purchaser bought it from you, afilu sheni namilo, well then maybe the second purchaser also should not be able to win, just as the first purchaser is unable to win. So this brisa doesn't seem to make any sense. So Amar Rav Sheshis explains, no, the brisa does make sense. We're talking about a situation where the second purchaser does not make any claim about what happened with the first purchaser. And in this kind of situation, we have a general principle that the court pleads on behalf of somebody who inherits and on behalf of somebody who purchases something. And so as a result, we're going to have a claim as if they made this claim. The idach, but when it came to the first purchaser, itan in, ilotan low. But if the first purchaser were to make it, then he would have a valid claim, and if he didn't, he wouldn't. And so, as a result, therefore, that's why this brisa specifically talks about not having a claim, the original owner not having a claim against the second purchaser, because he would have a claim against the first purchaser. Okay, so that's that brisa. Next, another brisa. So tanu machvas. So we've been talking about a situation with a sikrikon where somebody's life is threatened. What happens if the life is not threatened, but rather the non-Jew takes the land as a result of a debt, umachmas anparus, or maybe not because of a debt, but because of some kind of abusive contract. The Jastro translates this anparos as a sort of like a contract with a significant penalty clause, where if you don't do something, then something significant is going to be taken from you. Exactly, which we in Jewish law we don't view that as a valid contract, but obviously they're, we're talking about non-Jews, so they're going to use it as a method of abuse. But it's also in this context understood as basically just plain old theft. Indeed, Rashi here, O machmas anparos, it's just a little over halfway down in the narrow lines in Rashi. Guzzle ba'alma, this is just kind of theft in the world. Ve'eno maser biyado laharog, and he didn't have the power to kill the guy. Va'anas ha'obed kochavim karkaos b'chovo o ba'anparos. And so what we're talking about is where the non-Jew forced the land away from the guy through the obligation or this anparos, again, some kind of non-enforceable, in Jewish law at least, contract. Okay. Well, in those situations, ein bo mishum sikrikon. The law of sikrikon does not apply. But anparos atzma, but when it comes to this anparos, tzricha shetishehe shnei masar chodesh, you need to have 12 months. Well, one second, you just said that there's no rule of sikrikon when it comes to anparos, but then you just told me the law of sikrikon, because what's the law of sikrikon? The law of sikrikon is that if you buy it within 12 months, you have to just give it back to the original owner. But if you buy it after 12 months, you get to keep it. And that seems to be what the end of this brisa was saying. So the explanation is, Hachikamer, this is what we're saying. Sikrikon atzma, so the end of that brisa, which actually refers to anparos, it should not say anparos there, but it should say sikrikon. That sikrikon atzma tzricha sheteshay shnei masar chodesh. So obviously, what happened is it was sort of like a game of telephone, where they knew that in the last clause a reference was made to one of the topics in the first clause, and it wasn't clear exactly which one. We thought it was anparos, but it turns out that it's sikrikon. And so the bottom line is now our Mishnah, this brisa makes sense. The law of sikrikon applies to a sikrikon, and that is that you have to wait 12 months in order for you to take possession of it. But when it comes to anparos or a chov, then if the non-Jew uses that as a basis to take the land away, that is not a threat of death. And so as a result, the assumption is that the Jew will assume that he has some ability to get it back. And so as a result, because he has some ability to get it back, so we're not going to just allow a buyer to keep it. Okay. So Amar of Yosef Naktinan ein anpros bevavel, that we learned that there was no, that there's no anpros. This kind of contract does not exist in Bavel. All right, and so our initial understanding is that we're saying that there is no forced sales in Bavel. But one second, we do see that there are forced sales in Bavel. So how can you say that, Rav Yosef? So we answer, Ella ema ein din anparos bevavel. No, there's no law of anparos in Bavel, meaning that when it comes to even unforced sales, we're going to say that the people in the buyer in Bavel is able to keep it, presumably after 12 months. My time, why is it that they're able to keep it after 12 months? Kaven to Ikabei Davar, because there's a court, and Velo Azil Kavil, Ema Achuli Achil. And if he doesn't go to complain, so then we're going to assume that he's forgiven it. And so as a result, that's why we're not going to be worried about it. So the bottom line is that when there are courts that the Jews have that they can rely on, so then there's an obligation to go and deal with it as soon as possible. However, when there aren't courts, but it hasn't been forced through threat of death, so then we will give the buyer as much time as they need in order to try and get it back, because they could be scheming and it may just take a lot of time in order to get it back. So those are the various situations, and that is the law of sikrikon. So now we're going to tell a related story that somebody wanted to apply a law, and the law of sikrikon ended up coming up in the story. So Gidol bar Eli Kabel Ara Betaska Mibnei Baga. So there was a particular Bnei Baga, the people in a particular valley, and they owed a tax on some property. And Gidol bar Re'ilai said, listen, I'll take the land. He accepted the land on behalf of paying the tax. That's just the real estate tax. So Aktim v'yahev zuze b'tlashnin. And he gave 3 years of money. L'sof asa marvasa kamai. So the original owner at the end came back, and clearly from the rest of the story, he came back after 1 year. Amrulay, and he said to Gidol, listen, shata kamaisa diyavt achal. You ate the value associated with your first year of taxes. But hashta, anan yehavinan, anan achlinan. Now I'm going to pay the taxes and I'm going to eat the produce. So, of course, Gidol was like, but I prepaid 2 additional years. So, Azula Kamed Rav Papa. So they came in front of Rav Papa. Sabar Lemichtavle Tirpa Abneg Baga. So Rav Papa was thinking that maybe the people in the valley should pay back Gidol for the loss of his additional 2 years of taxes, because after all, he took on that responsibility at their request. But Amrle Rav Huna Brei de Rav Yoshua Rav Papa. So, but Rav Huna pointed out, Imkain Asisa Sikrikon. You've effectively made Gidol into like a buyer from a Sikrikon, because just as we say with respect to a buyer from a Sikrikon that we will in the end allow that buyer, if assuming it's after a year, right? We'll allow that buyer to get all of their money back. They get paid back in full, meaning either the original owner can buy it back from the Sikrikon at the value that the Sikrikon paid, or as we'll see, the Sikrikon has to pay 1/4 of the value to the original owner, and that 1/4 value is based on the fact that we assume that the Sikrikon sold it for less than face value. And so as a result, that's the measure of the discount that the buyer benefited from. And so as a result, we're effectively trying to leave the Sikrikon whole. But the Sikrikon law is specifically only in connection with a case of murder, and where somebody's threatened to life is threatened. But here, Gidol wasn't buying it from a Sikrikon. There was no Sikrikon here. There was just a field whose taxes weren't being paid. Nobody's life was threatened. So Ella Amar Rav Huna, Brei de Rav Yoshua. So and Rav Huna was said that really what's going on is Hiniach Mausav al Karen Hatzvi. Gidol has really just put his money on the horns of a deer, and the deer has run away with it. And so as a result, there's nothing to be done. So now let's just again tee up the question that we're going to deal with at the beginning of the day tomorrow, which is, our Mishnah concluded that the buyer from a Sikrikon can give 1/4 to the owner. But 1/4 of what? So for the answer to that question, stay tuned to tomorrow's daf, and we'll pick up with the 2 dots, God willing, tomorrow. Have a wonderful, wonderful day. Looking forward to continuing our learning together.
Have a good day. Thank you.